Okay, June.
I acknowledge the Indigenous people of the land and the elders emerging past and present, and all of your ancestors and all of our ancestors, and that we have beautiful unity in this land, in the present and the future.
And bind together our hearts, unite and bind together the hearts, join in accord all the souls, join in accord all the souls. Oh Lord, make these faces radiant through the light of thy oneness. Unite and bind together the hearts. Unite and bind together. Join in accord all the souls, join in accord all the souls. Oh Lord, make these faces radiant through the light of thy oneness. Unite and bind together. Faces radiant through the light of thy oneness. Unite and bind together the hearts. Unite and bind face is radiant through the light of thy wonders.
O thou kind Lord, O thou who art generous and merciful, we are the servants of thy threshold and are gathered beneath the sheltering shadow of thy divine unity. The sun of thy mercy is shining upon all, and the clouds of thy bounty shower upon all. Thy gifts encompass all. Thy loving providence sustains all. Thy protection overshadows all, and the glances of thy favor are cast upon all. O Lord, grant thine infinite bestowals, and let the light of thy guidance shine. Illumine the eyes, gladden the hearts with abiding joy, confer a new spirit upon all people, and bestow upon them eternal life. Unlock the gates of true understanding, and let the light of faith shine resplendent. Gather all people beneath the shadow of thy bounty, and cause them to unite in harmony, so that they may become as the rays of one sun, as the waves of one ocean, and as the fruit of one tree. May they drink from the same fountain. May they be refreshed by the same breeze. May they receive illumination from the same source of light. Thou art the giver, the merciful, the omnipotent.
Behold how good and pleasant it is when brothers dwell in unity. As the dew of Hermon, as the dew that descended upon the mountains of Zion. For there the Lord commanded the blessing, even life forevermore. May God be gracious to us and bless us and make his face to shine upon us, that they may be known upon earth, thy saving power among all nations. Let the peoples praise thee, O God. Let all the peoples praise thee. Let the nations be glad and sing for joy, for thou dost judge the peoples with equity and guide the nations upon earth. Let the peoples praise thee, O God. Let all the peoples praise thee. Old Testament.
Ye have heard that it was said by them of old time, thou shalt not kill, and whosoever shall kill shall be in danger of the judgment. But I say unto you, that whoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. And whoever shall say to his brother, Raka, shall be in danger of the council. But whoever shall say, thou fool, shall be in danger of hellfire. Therefore, if you bring thy gift to the altar, and there rememberest that thy brother hath fought against thee, I think, leave there thy gift before the altar and go thy way. First be reconciled to thy brother, and then come the gift. Ye have heard that it hath been said, thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thy enemy. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you, that ye may be the children of your Father which is in heaven. For he maketh his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sendeth rain on the just and on the unjust. For if ye love them which love you, what reward have ye? Do not even the publicans the same? And if ye salute your brethren only, what do ye more than others? Do not even publicans so? Be therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. Both from New Testament.
Barry, you had to unmute.
And hold fast altogether by the rope which God stretches out for you, and be not divided among yourselves. And remember with gratitude God's favor on you, for ye were enemies, and he joined your hearts in love, so that by his grace ye became brethren, and ye were on the brink of the pit of fire, and he saved you from it. Thus doth God make his signs clear to you, that you may be guided. Let there arise out of you a band of people inviting to all that is good, enjoining what is right and forbidding what is wrong. They are the ones to attain felicity. Be not like those who are divided among themselves and fall into disputations after receiving clear signs. Did you raise? From the Holy Quran. O mankind, we created you from a single pair of male and female, and made you into nations and tribes, that you may know each other, not that you may despise each other. Verily, the most honored of you in the sight of God is he who is the most righteous of you. And God has full knowledge and is well acquainted with all things. Quran.
Sachi, you had to unmute.
A little bit. So mankind was one single nation, and God sent messengers with glad tidings and warnings. And with them, he sent the book in truth to judge between people in matters wherein they differed. But the people of the book, after the clear signs came to them, did not differ among themselves, except through selfish contumacy. God, by his grace, guided the believers to the truth concerning that wherein they differed. For God guides whom he will to path that is straight. Be united. Speak in harmony. Let your minds apprehend alike. Common be your prayer. Common be the end of your assembly. Common be your resolution. Common be your deliberations. Alike be your feelings. Unified be your hearts. Common be your intention. Perfect be your unity. Rig Veda.
It is incumbent upon every man in this day to hold fast unto whatsoever will promote the interest and exalt the station of all nations and just governments. To each and every one of the blessings which the pen and the Most High hath revealed, the doors of the love and unity have been unlocked and flung open to the face of men. We have every while declared, and our word is the truth. Consort with the followers of all religion in a spirit of friendliness and fellowship. Whatsoever hath led the children of men to shun one another and hath caused dissection and divisions among them, hath thoroughly the revelation of these words been nullified and abolished. From the heaven of God's will and for the purpose of ennobling the world of being and of elevating the minds and souls of men, hath been sent down that which is the most effective instrument for the education of the whole human race. The highest essence and most expression of whatever the peoples of old have either said or written hath through this most potent revelation been sent down from the heaven of the will of the all-possessing, the ever-abiding God. Of all which hath been revealed, love in one's country is an element of the faith of God. The tongue of grandeur hath, however, in the day of his manifestation, proclaimed, it is not his to boast who loveth his country, but it is his who loveth the world. Bahula.
The purpose, you hear me, Lord?
Yeah.
Thank you. The purpose of the one true God is that it be his glory in revealing himself unto men, is to lay bare those gems that lie hidden within the mind of their true and inmost selves, that the diverse communions of the earth and the manifold systems of religious belief should never be allowed to foster the feelings of animosity among men, is in this day of the essence of the faith of God and his religion. His principles and laws, his firmly established and mighty systems He proceeded from one source, another rays of one light. That they differ one from another is to be attributed to the varying requirements of the ages in which they were promulgated. The utterance of God is a lamp, whose light is these words. They are the fruits of one tree, and the leaves of one branch. Dear the one with another, with the utmost love and harmony, with friendliness and fellowship. He who is the day star of the truth beareth me witness. So powerful is the light of unity that it can illuminate the whole earth. The one true God, he who knoweth all things, himself testifieth to the truth of these words. Bahola, Greening pages 287, 288.
O children of men, know ye not why we created you all from the same dust, that no one should exalt himself over the other? Ponder at the old times in your hearts how ye were created. Since we have created you all from one same substance, it is incumbent on you to be even as one soul, to walk with the same feet, eat with the same mouth, and dwell with the same land, that from your inmost being, by your deeds and actions, the signs of oneness and the essence of detachment made manifest. Such is my counsel to you, O concourse of light. Heed ye this counsel, that ye may obtain the fruit of holiness from the tree of wondrous glory. Bautullah, Hidden Words, Arabic, number 68.
May they all live together in perfect harmony. O God, raise aloft the banner of oneness of mankind. O God, establish the most great peace. Cement thou, O God, the hearts together.
I had to change. Thank you, everyone. I had to change place because I couldn't hear from my computer. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
We haven't finished the reading of 9.
Oh,
Just raise it from cement thou, O God, the hearts together. I would think after 50 years I would know this prayer.
maybe you can start from the beginning.
Okay. O thou kind Lord, thou hast created all humanity from the same side. Thou hast decreed that all shall belong to the same household. In thy holy presence they are all thy servants, and all mankind are sheltered beneath thy tabernacle. All have gathered together at thy table of bounty. all are illumined through the light of thy providence. O God, thou art kind to all, thou hast provided for all, dost shelter all, conferrest life upon all. Thou hast endowed each and all with talents and faculties, and all are submerged in the ocean of thy mercy. O thou kind Lord, unite all, let the religions agree and make the nations one, so that they may see each other as one family, and the whole earth as one home. May they all live together in perfect harmony. O God, raise aloft the banner of the oneness of mankind. O God, establish the most great peace. Cement thou, O God, the hearts together. O thou kind Father, God, gladden our hearts with the fragrance of thy love. Brighten our eyes through the light of thy guidance. Delight our ears with the melody of thy word, and shelter us all in the stronghold of thy providence. Thou art the mighty and powerful. Thou art the forgiving, and thou art the one who overlooketh the shortcomings of all mankind. Abdu'l-Baha.
Okay. Sorry about it. Thank you, everyone. Now, as you all know, today's speaker is Ben Perkins. I knew Ben Perkins as a toddler. I don't know whether he knows. In the mid 90s, for a couple of weeks, the whole family, Perkins family, was living with us. But then they moved to various places, and now they are very far away from us. Last year, 2020, was the centenary of the Baha'i faith's inception in Australia. And there were a series of talks given by many people. And Ben was one of them, and I happened to listen to him, and I was amazed how well read and how well researched his talk was, and how well matured a young man he was. So when we were having these interfaith meetings for the last 23, 24 weeks, we wanted to bring in a wide spectrum of speakers from all walks of life and all ages. And now he is the youngest one to present to us. And I asked him to give him a profile, but he said this, that he has completed undergraduate studies in the field of chemistry, just like his father. I think his father, David Perkins, is there. He has a father has a PhD in chemistry, I think. And Ben briefly worked in administration and business management. He says while he is still establishing himself professionally, his primary passion is studying Baha'i history and what the Baha'i framework has to offer in terms of social action initiatives of the wider community. So I'll invite Ben to give his talk, and also maybe you can unmute and share anything that you want to share on the screen.
Hello, thanks very much. I'm sorry I haven't been to any of these meetings before. I've been a bit busy. I do remember, Mr. Perry, I think your daughter graduated at the same time as my father got his PhD. So yes. I remember seeing you then. And I think he also had I think it was your family was staying with you and somebody forgot to fry the chilies to make it less spicy and none of you could eat it. So he ate all of the spicy food. He was the only one who could handle it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll just share my screen. Hopefully that worked.
25th December. Unity in diversity, transforming the ideal into reality.
Okay, so I hope you can see the screen. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so this sort of presentation, I've just selected some quotes that are on this idea of unity and diversity, and transforming that ideal into a reality, because obviously as Baha'is and anybody who believes in something, we have these ideas that we really love, but you sort of share them with people and they go, okay, great, good for you, but that doesn't do anything for me. So looking at how do we then do a bit more with it than just saying it. The outline is sort of what I'm going to talk about. Is one is the ideal of what is unity and diversity. What is the framework for action that the faith uses to kind of try to bring that into reality, and what are general practical considerations? Because I think the general guidance we have in the faith can really be used for any organization, whether it's Baha'i, non-Baha'i, religious or not religious. So just looking at some of those general things very briefly and not very in depth, but yeah, sort of introducing the scope of what the faith has to offer on this topic. Okay, so the ideal of unity and diversity is founded on this concept of racial equality and gender equality, all different kinds of equality. So this is a quote from the Hidden Words. And I think I'll just read the quotes because it might be a bit easier than trying to coordinate readers. But Mr. Perry did a very good job of that. I'm not going to tackle that. Yeah, so this is from the Hidden Words. It says, "O children of men, know ye not why we created you all from the same dust, that no one should exalt himself over the other. Ponder at all times in your hearts how ye were created. Since we have created you all from one substance, it is incumbent on you to be even as one soul, to walk with the same feet, eat with the same mouth, and dwell on the same land. That from your inmost being, by your deeds and actions, the signs of oneness and the essence of detachment may be made manifest. Such is my counsel to you, O concourse of light. Heed ye this counsel, that ye may obtain the fruit of holiness from the tree of wondrous glory." So that's a very beautiful quote, obviously, from the writings of Baha'u'llah. And it's obviously the Hidden Words, especially, is something we can very easily apply to our own lives and our own sort of character. But of course, you might think, well, okay, I'm going to treat everyone like they're the same dust, but if they're not doing the same to me, what does that achieve? It doesn't really change society. So that's a quote which is very valuable for individual transformation, but how do we then translate this to society if people aren't interested in kind of playing by the same rules? This is another quote now from Abdul Baha, who is the son of Baha'u'llah, sort of elaborating on this concept and speaking about how this sort of individual concept does apply to society as well. So he says, all the divisions in the world, hatred, war, and bloodshed, are caused by one or other of these prejudices. The whole world must be looked upon as one single country, all the nations as one nation, all men as belonging to one race. Religions, races, and nations are all divisions of man's making only, and are necessary only in his thought. Before God, there are neither Persians, Arabs, French, nor English. God is God for all, and to him all creation is one. So we see here Abdul Baha has expounded on Baha'u'llah's words, and we sort of have a more expanding vision of this concept. But it's not necessarily any more practical, because it's like, well, how do we make all the nations one nation? A lot of the people who tried that in the past have used war to kind of tackle this question. So obviously you can go wrong with this concept, even if your heart is in the right place, as important as it is to reflect on quotes like this. This is now a quote from Shoghi Effendi, who is the grandson of Abdul Baha and the guardian of the Baha'i faith. And often his writings were sort of honing the guidance into sort of a sharpened point of focus. So it's a bit more practical again. So here he talks a bit more about what does this unity of mankind look like. So Shoghi Effendi writes in World Order of Baha'u'llah, which is letters written in the 1930s, he says, national rivalries, hatreds, and intrigues will cease, and racial animosity and prejudice will be replaced by racial amity, understanding, and cooperation. The causes of religious strife will be permanently removed. Economic barriers and restrictions will be completely abolished, and the inordinate distinction between classes will be obliterated. Destitution on the one hand and gross accumulation of ownership on the other will disappear. The enormous energy dissipated and wasted on war, whether economic or political, will be consecrated to such ends as will extend the range of human inventions and technical development. So now, at least I think, we see this point of seeing everyone as the same dust has now become sort of a blueprint for society. So it's in very sort of economic terms. It's very easy. Maybe it was a bit hard to see from the hidden word, how does this apply to governance and these sorts of things? But from this quote, we have a much clearer vision of, okay, what does this actually mean in terms of everyday life and society functioning? Yeah, so we see how the concept is translated by these two figures, Abdu'l-Baha and Shoghi Effendi. So this sounds great, this vision, or at least I think it sounds great. I see if everyone agrees. But what do we do with this? Because do we run for office? As Baha'is probably would say no, but if we're not doing that, then what do we do? I thought reading just through Guidance of the Universal House of Justice, who was sort of guiding the Baha'i community in the last cycle of plans since 1996. The era it was born is focusing on the institute process, which is sort of a way of imparting knowledge and action specifically for the Baha'i community and what the Baha'i community is trying to do. But obviously the stuff we've learned as a community applies to a lot of other things. So at first I thought, well, I'll look at what not to do because it's a bit easier to be negative, I think, at least for me. So this is sort of some of the pitfalls that the Universal House of Justice warns against when you're sort of trying to achieve something. But the first one I saw, this isn't from a message, it's my opinion, so take it with a grain of salt. But one of them is actually rigidity. So this is from a letter Shoghi Effendi wrote, I believe, to the National Spiritual Assembly of India. You can read it in the compilation Dawn of a New Day, which has all of the letters Shoghi Effendi sent to India to the institutions. But here Shoghi Effendi says, it is not uniformity which we should seek in the formation of any national or local assembly. For the bedrock of the Baha'i administrative order is the principle of unity and diversity. So there's the title, which has been so strongly and so repeatedly emphasized in the writings of the cause. Differences which are not fundamental and contrary to the basic teachings of the cause should be maintained, while the underlying unity of the administrative order should be at any cost preserved and ensured. So here you sort of see that you don't want to kind of make everyone exactly the same as you. And okay, you've got to say the same things as me, you've got to do the same things as me. So in terms of the cause, obviously we go to the writings and the teachings of the administration. But if you think about any organization, the idea is you pick sort of general concepts you want to achieve and you focus on those. You don't worry about maybe they support a different football team to you. That just doesn't enter your mind. You're not going to try and make them change football teams just because you're trying to achieve something. So that rigidity and being too kind of focused on one specific identity can be a bit of a pitfall for trying to achieve something on a societal scale. A wonderful book which sort of explores this idea a lot is A Manual for Pioneers by Ruhiya Khanum, who was the wife of Shoghi Effendi. There's one really funny story, at least I thought it was funny, where she says she went across Africa visiting Baha'i communities, and she sort of has a bit of a go in a constructive way, obviously, but she talks about some of the things she saw that she didn't like. And one of them is that she saw the native African Baha'is in a community were saying Khoda Hafez, because that means goodbye in Persian, because the Persian pioneer had said, okay, you have to say Khoda Hafez. And Ruhiya Khanum sort of thought, well, that has nothing to do with the Baha'i faith. That's just your Persian culture. So that would be an example of being a bit too rigid. Okay, they don't have to speak Persian to be a Baha'i. That's sort of an extra thing. So you don't want to get focused on that in that specific setting. But it's a very good book and it's got a lot of stories like that. And she's quite funny and quite frank and blunt about things, which is refreshing, I think, to read. So another pitfall, which is really difficult for religious organizations, especially in the field of social action, is ulterior motivations. So the Universal House of Justice said in the 2010 Rezvan message, speaking about the institute process, these kinds of things, but they say, in this connection, we feel compelled to raise a warning. It will be important for all to recognize that the value of engaging in social action and public discourse is not to be judged by the ability to bring enrollments. Though endeavors in these two areas of activity may well affect an increase in the size of Baha'i community, they are not undertaken for this purpose. Sincerity in this respect is an imperative. So we see, obviously, sometimes Baha'is have gotten a bit overexcited and other religious organizations sort of will say, okay, well, we'll do this for you, we'll help you materially, but you've got to sign here and join up with our church or whatever, or vote for our political party to think about it in another context. But sort of, you want to actually achieve something, you have to completely banish that from your mind. So even if you want people to kind of learn about your religion, if you're helping them with something or trying to achieve something, you don't want to make that conditional. And it's interesting how firm the Universal House of Justice's language is here, where it says sincerity in this respect is an imperative. It's not optional. It's absolutely crucial. Yeah, so that sort of makes sense. It's very important not to kind of even unintentionally have a bit of a bait and switch where I'm saying this, but I sort of want this. You've got to make sure they're both matching. So it's fine to want this, but you don't want to dress it up as that. You either have this or that. Yeah, that sort of thing. Another pitfall that the Universal House of Justice wrote about in that same message is self-righteousness, sort of this attitude of, well, I believe in these things, and so I'm talking down to you kind of thing. So in the faith, we want to share concepts, so we're on equal footing. It goes back to that hidden word about being made from the same dust. As soon as you sort of start to elevate yourself, well, now you're talking down to people and got the wrong focus. So what the Universal House of Justice says is, moreover, care should be exercised to avoid overstating the Baha'i experience or drawing undue attention to fledgling efforts, such as the Junior Youth Spiritual Empowerment Program, which are best left to mature at their own pace. The watchword in all cases is humility. While conveying enthusiasm about their beliefs, the Friends should guard against projecting an air of triumphalism, hardly appropriate amongst themselves, much less in other circumstances. So pretty straightforward. We want to be humble about what we're sharing. And if you think about it, it makes diversity a lot easier to have, because if people are kind of talking down to others, you kind of get a bit resentful of that view. It's like, oh, well, you think you're pretty good, I don't want to hear about it. But if we're always humble and kind of sharing our beliefs as separate to our own ego, then that reduces that friction because nobody feels spoken down to. We're kind of sharing equally, and it just smooths everything out. So that's quite an important one as well, I think. And really, this whole message, the 2010 Rezwan message, is a great blueprint for trying to run an organization or be in an organization, I think. So it's well worth reading the entire thing for yourself. Were there any thoughts on that at all? Before we keep on going with my voice. If not, I'll keep going. I can't really see everyone's face, so I don't know if people are wanting to say something.
Well, yeah, friends, if you want to comment or ask question, you can interrupt him.
Yeah. So I might keep going then. So that's sort of looking at some of the kind of negative trends we might get caught up in if we're trying to work with other people. But what's a more constructive way of looking at this problem? What is something positive that we can do? And something you find emphasized a lot in the Baha'i writings is this principle of consultation for the purpose of establishing a unity of vision, because once the vision is united, you can sort of go forth without arguing. You can really focus in on something. So what is the spiritual station of consultation? So for Baha'is, this is quite meaningful. And even if you're not in a Baha'i setting or a religious thing, it's still worth considering, I think, just this sort of spiritual value in consulting and respecting other views. So a tablet of Baha'u'llah, which the Universal House of Justice quoted, says, say, no man can attain his true station except through his justice. No power can exist except through unity. No welfare and no well-being can be attained except through consultation. So that's quite astounding language to me when I read this, because it's almost an ultimatum where it says no welfare can be attained except through consultation. So this idea of somebody's going to impose equality and say this is now a law, if you don't follow this, wrong, that kind of thing. Well, Baha'u'llah is sort of saying here that will never work. You won't actually achieve welfare because now the person enforcing that is sort of above everyone, and the system ends up perpetuating itself and all these things. So this station of consultation is really almost, at least in this specific quote, the only way to achieve this is through consulting. We can't bypass it or overrule it. It's comes from that. So that's sort of spiritual. Maybe it's a bit woo. It's like, okay, great, very spiritual. That doesn't help me. So what is the practical station of consultation? So a letter of the Universal House of Justice says, justice is indeed essential to resist the vain imaginings and idle fancies of social and political machinations, to see reality with one's own eyes, and to identify the requirements for an equitable social order. But then unity is essential, forged through consultative processes, including action and reflection, to achieve power, the power required for positive social change. So now we see some of the practical benefits of this. And one of them is it stops you from being manipulated. There's a lot of talk recently about fake news and trust in the media. Do we trust the media? And I guess the principle here is that if you consult and talk, you can achieve that trust, because you can ask the question, okay, you're saying that, where's your proof? They shared the proof. Okay, you're getting somewhere. You're not just going, well, I don't believe that, I'm not going to talk to you, that kind of thing. So we see it overcomes a lot of the things in the popular discourse we hear really can be overcome through open consultation. And obviously they speak here about action and reflection as well, because it doesn't do anyone any good to sit in 20 meetings and just consult all the time. If you're not doing anything, you don't really have anything to actually consult about, so it's probably not that worthwhile. So we have these other things as well that you have to do, not getting kind of fundamentalist about, well, I'm a consultant. So we're seeing it's spiritually important, is practically important. So how do we achieve it? So there's a whole compilation released by the Universal House of Justice on the topic. Also, book 10 of the Ruhi Institute is all about consultation. So if you want to study that, you'll go more in depth. But I just picked a very brief quote here, which talks about the achievements consultation has had for the Baha'i community. So the Universal House of Justice says, in every land, those who have been attracted to the message of Baha'u'llah and are committed to his vision are systematically learning how to give effect to his teachings. Cohorts of youth are becoming ever more conscious of their spiritual identity and are directing their energies towards the advancement of their societies. People with divergent perspectives are discovering how to replace contention and the imposition of authority with consultation and a collective search for solutions. Now, I find this quite interesting because in terms of practical implementation, we see two things it's saying to avoid. One is contention. That's sort of easy to grasp. Okay, like fighting and getting up at the meeting and going, you all suck, I'm leaving, I don't want to talk. Okay, that's contention. Obviously, that's not what we want. But I thought this was very interesting. A second point they've raised is the imposition of authority, this idea of imposing your view. And it's probably easy to avoid directly doing that, of saying, well, I have this position, do what I say or else. But I think it's also, you can subtly impose authority by saying, well, I respect your opinion, but really you should think that, like that kind of thing, or kind of implanting this idea that my opinion is worth more than yours, which is something we all fall into. I know I fall into it of like, well, I've read a lot, so maybe my opinion's better than yours, but that's not what consultation actually is. And in terms of practical implementation, it's not just saying, okay, well, I'm not going to be contentious or impose authority. You have to really constantly be reflecting on, okay, did I do that in the consultation? And can I avoid that in the future? And it's that like constant process of thinking about it and really working to achieve it. It's not just something, Baha'u'llah said consult, okay, great, congratulations, we all consult, but it's something we have to constantly be working on. And this collective search for solutions. So it does me no good to just sit there and go, I've solved all of society's problems. I need to involve other people and they'll challenge my views, I'll challenge their views, all of these sorts of things. And obviously, if you study the guidance yourself, you can get a proper view from the Baha'i writings or wherever you want to study it, rather than just taking my opinions as probably all wrong. But are there any thoughts on consultation or anything anyone would like to share?
Can I just?
If not,
yeah, I was struck by how three of those principles you just mentioned are the same principles which interfaith dialogue is learning through experience, and one is equality and not talking down to others, and another one is listening, and another one is learning together. So it sounds like those principles between religions, which we're all gradually starting to learn, are applicable between people as well.
Yeah, thanks very much for sharing that. I love what you raised about the importance of listening, because often it's very easy to fall into hearing, but you're kind of just waiting for your turn to speak, or you're thinking, okay, I said that, here's how I'm going to refute that, here's how I'm going to do it, especially in religious dialogue, when it's like, well, in Islam we believe this, and you're sort of thinking, well, that's wrong because of it, and you're not really listening or getting anything from it. You're just waiting for your turn to jump on them, which isn't really consultation. Yeah.
Agree.
So is there anything else, or I might keep going? Oops. I might just pause there and let you discuss, because my battery's almost going flat. So I'll go plug this in, and then I'll come back and continue.
Yes. The on the consultation, there was a short video clip that I saw recently. There's an American journalist by the name Amanda Ripley. She wrote a book called High Conflict. And she was interviewed by one of the journalists. And in her book, she highlights the Baha'i governance and consultation as a model for a better world. So how friends outside have observed Baha'i governance and consultation. Amanda Ripley, that's her name. The book's name is High Conflict. Okay, now I filled in the commercial.
Thanks for the intermission.
John
Ben,
wants to say.
Yeah. Ben, thank you for that. This is a subject that had been sort of looked at by different religions, even within our own religions. For example, the World Council of Churches was formed in the last century to bring all the Christians, at least Christians, together to start with, because we were divided although we had one creed. And all what you said, it's like utopia, just idealistic, outlook, but challenging us, to be more practical and consultative and all that. In South India, the Church of South India, South India was formed with 5 different churches. Then the North India. And then in Australia, the Uniting Church came together in 1977 to bring 3 churches together. Actually, we call ourselves Uniting because we want to unite. It should be a continuous process. And what you are talking about is that, challenging everyone to get into this way of thinking and make it happen as much as possible, even during our times. And I do appreciate, but it's happening in different areas. I appreciate Baha'i group, how they try to break all the barriers and sort of focus on one God and one way to bring about unity and true love and joy. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that, and and the practical example of it in the uniting of sort of different churches. Yeah. Yeah, so I think that the next segment I sort of wanted to look at was okay, it's all well and good to get together and talk to each other, but obviously it's not just our opinion, especially with religion. We sort of have our religion's theologies, maybe our church's doctrines. And how do we draw on this sort of established knowledge that we accept as fact and share that in our consultations and in our work, while still maintaining this unity? Because this, I think, is quite important. It's very easy to sort of, we can have unity in diversity on our opinions on movies. We can have it on our opinions on food. But when it's like serious issues, then that sort of all goes out the window. And I think it comes back to this idea of we have established knowledge, and often we can be humble about our own views. We can't be humble about the views that we see as established in academia, of religion, all sorts of things. So what is a way of tackling this? These quotes are a bit longer because I couldn't really see a way of cutting them down without losing meaning. So forgive me for that. But this is from a 2010 letter from the Universal House of Justice. And what they say is, we cannot help noticing, however, that achievements of the Baha'i community, because that's who they're addressing, that achievements tend to be more enduring in those regions where the friends strive to understand the totality of the vision conveyed in the messages. While difficulties often arise when phrases and sentences are taken out of context and viewed as isolated fragments. The institutions and agencies of the faith should help the believers to analyze but not reduce, to ponder meaning but not dwell on words, to identify distinct areas of action but not compartmentalize. We realize that this is no small task. Society speaks more and more in slogans. We hope that the habits the friends are forming in study circles, this is the institute process of what the Baha'is are doing at the moment, to work with full and complex thoughts and to achieve understanding will be extended to various spheres of activity. So this is sort of a way of starting on it, is this idea that knowledge can't really be simplified. So you can't view phrases out of context, which is kind of funny because this talk I put together is exactly that. I've taken a bunch of phrases out of context, but hopefully it's not causing problems. But yeah, this idea, and it's funny because often we think of slogans simplify information to make it easier to understand, but often it actually makes it more difficult. So phrases, for example, make America great again or Black Lives Matter. Okay, those phrases mean different things to different people. You think, okay, well, you're saying you agree with this, this, and this. And it's like, well, no, I just said that phrase. So it actually gets in the way because you're not actually communicating. You just say a magic 4 words, and then it's anyone's guess is what you're actually talking about. So this idea, you don't want to simplify your knowledge down to just a few sentences and then go, okay, well, I'm just going to say this to everybody and that's going to solve everything. But kind of, you want to have complex thoughts because that's more worthwhile thoughts. Simplified thoughts cause a bit of confusion. But I mean, you can all take this quote for yourselves, I think. It's have different views on it. But that's my take on it anyway. Again, talking about the practical work of the faith, but I think generally applicable. The House says, the activities of the current plans provide new avenues for addressing the various facets of the double crusade. So the double crusade, as I understand it, Shoghi Effendi spoke about the Baha'i community focusing on improving itself and on improving society. So this idea that the Baha'is aren't perfect, they work on their community and then share that with the wider community. House goes on to say, the culture of learning that has emerged in recent years allows the Baha'i community to address such challenges in a systematic and ongoing manner in the context of the activities in the cluster. The process must inevitably unfold in an organic manner. Initiatives within the Baha'i community will emerge at the grassroots and clusters where there is intensive activity. Approaches that prove to be effective can gradually be shared with other areas. As new guidance is provided to the Baha'is of the world, it is important that the Friends welcome the challenge of learning, to put it into effect, without falling prey to an unfortunate duality that pits one position against another. So it's a bit of a wall of text, that, but I hope it sort of makes sense even without the context of the rest of the message. But as I understand it, it's sort of this idea that change happens from the bottom up rather than from the top down. So it's all well and good to have your ideas and sort of say, well, everyone should do this. But just trying to think of a practical example. But it's like, okay, what I think about how a community should run, maybe, okay, I tell an Australian Indigenous community, you should do this and this and this. But I don't have any knowledge of what it's like to live there. So maybe my solutions have absolutely no relevance to what they're doing. So really, it should be an Indigenous person living in that community. I can share general principles like about health or governance, that kind of thing. But then they're the ones who have to put it into action because they know what they're talking about. Anything I do is going to cause 10 more problems because I have no idea what I'm doing. So just this idea that, okay, even if you have knowledge, you should respect that somebody at the grassroots probably has knowledge you don't even know you don't have. So just respecting that idea that things happen organically and happen from the ground up. You can't kind of structure everything from the top down and then introduce like this elaborate system. Yeah, if that sort of makes sense.
Mm.
So we've spoken about, okay, we want to share knowledge and leave it to the grassroots. We want to be humble in our views, all of that. But how do we share these learnings? This is very important, I think. This is from a very old letter from 1967, a letter from the Universal House of Justice, where they said, the same presentation of the teachings will not appeal to everybody. The method of expression and the approach must be varied in accordance with the outlook and interests of the hearer. An approach which is designed to appeal to everybody will usually result in attracting the middle section, leaving both extremes untouched. This is interesting to me because I feel like the middle section generally doesn't cause that many problems in society. It's the extremes on the other sides that are sort of riling everyone up. So it's almost more important to reach those extremes than it is to reach the middle. And just this very important idea that you can't adopt the one-size-fits-all approach. This is talking about sharing the faith and the religious teachings, but it applies to everything. If you think about anti-vaccination people, for example, well, obviously what the information, the way we're sharing it isn't working. It's not reaching them. They've heard it. It's not that they don't know what we're saying or people who agree with vaccination are saying. It's just that the method in which it's being said doesn't reach them. So rather than kind of getting really angry and trying to arrest them or something, maybe it would be worthwhile to just think, okay, what is a way of putting it across that's completely different or maybe speak to their concerns and their needs? And this is really quite important because I find at uni anyway, I found a lot of people were very unwilling to do this because they're like, okay, well, they should just agree with me. And it's like, okay, great, but they don't. What are we going to do? Well, they should agree. It's like, well, you're not getting anywhere. You're kind of just getting riled up. I remember talking to someone from a political party who was handing out pamphlets, and I got in a conversation. And eventually just said, well, if you agree with me, take a pamphlet. If not, then F off. And I thought, oh, well, there you go. That's one way of getting your point across. Yeah, so just this idea of different approaches, not just coming up with an approach and saying, I'm going to keep hammering this away, and if you don't like it, get stuffed. Because that's not really unity and diversity. That's that imposition of authority and contention we spoke about before, but a different manifestation of it. Okay, so now that, okay, we're consulting, we're sharing our views humbly. Now what? How do we actually take action? Because that's what's important, is the action which comes out of it, not just sort of talking. We're talking is very valuable, is what we're doing right now, but how do we have more tangible efforts? And one sort of aspect of this is, where does the responsibility fall for taking the action? And something which in Queensland, I noticed at least, a lot of it sort of fell to the youth because they have more time, they don't have jobs, they don't have kids. Maybe they should do everything. But here's an interesting quote from the Universal House of Justice where they say, experience has demonstrated that the process of community building falters if there is a sense that the work of the plan is confined to the young or to certain neighborhoods alone. The House of Justice has emphasized the importance of a two-pronged approach to expansion and consolidation, improving endeavors throughout the localities in a cluster, as well as in one or more receptive neighborhoods. The full pattern of activity envisioned for a thriving community requires involvement of the generality of believers. The friends everywhere can be assisted to overcome dichotomies, to grasp the intent of the plan's community building activities, and to determine the place each will choose in contributing to the collective effort. So this is really packed with meaning for a small paragraph, I think. Because number one is, it's not just the work of the youth alone, because if you think about a community or an endeavor, well, a bunch of 18 to 25-year-olds isn't really a community, it's a bunch of kids. So it's important to have like that whole, what Siva said at the start, that kind of interplay between different generations, because old people have experience that young people don't have, young people have ideas that old people maybe wouldn't occur to them. But we really need everyone working together, otherwise we'll end up just a very extreme one demographic's view. And there's some other elements that are identified here. So overcoming dichotomies. So false dichotomy is something that we say in the faith a lot. And it's just this idea that, well, instead of doing that, you should do this. And well, really, maybe we could do both. They're not really competing. So that's quite important. One is grasping the intent of what we're doing. That's applicable to anything, because you can get so stuck on the procedure that you forget, okay, why are we actually doing this? And then, okay, all the procedure doesn't actually help. And determining the place for everyone that is going to contribute, rather than maybe assigning everyone a contribution. That should be their decision in consultation with you, not something you sort of end up imposing. But this is another wonderful letter that the Universal House of Justice wrote to the NSA of the United States, which is well worth reading the entire thing because you get more context to what they're talking about here that you don't get with just reading this paragraph. Okay, so another important thing with taking action is this idea of balance. So in political thought, you could maybe call it centrism, of kind of taking the middle ground. And it's fascinating to me that this is an idea which is extremely hated by everyone, it seems, where it's like you're a centrist, you're not having an opinion, you're not doing anything. So it's like, why do, as Baha'is at least, why does the Baha'i community commit very much to this idea of balance and not getting involved in partisanship when everyone is sort of like, well, if you cared, you'd be partisan. So one of the things the Universal House of Justice has said about this is, too often political goals, even when pursued in the name of justice, are a chimera. For the fundamental partisanship in contemporary political life means policies are often implemented without building consensus, and consequently seeds of discontent and continuing political struggle are sown. Conflict and contention ultimately yield more conflict and contention. Eliminating social problems rather than merely ameliorating them to an extent requires unity of thought as well as action, an open heart as well as an open hand, conditions which Baha'u'llah's revelation is intended to bring about. And I'm sure other people as well as Baha'is are interested in bringing this about. So yeah, and you saw this, you see this, I think, after every political election where people get very upset and you see the comments online are kind of like, well, you lost, get over it. And it's like, well, that's not going to make anyone feel good. They're going to feel like, well, next election, I want to be saying that to you. And so that's this principle that the more angry you are, you're just going to make people angry and get angry yourself. So you see, this isn't just an ideal. There's a very practical reason for Baha'is to get involved with this. What does this mean for this idea that, well, you're not achieving anything? And I think it's very important to have this concept that compromise and being willing to compromise and collaborate doesn't mean complacency, and it doesn't mean surrendering important concepts to the partisan debate. So the Baha'i faith has a lot of general teachings for economics. So as Baha'is, would we avoid talking about economics just because politicians also talk about that? So that's not something that we want to do, because then we're kind of surrendering and going, okay, well, we're just going to hide in our Baha'i temple and sort of be very spiritual and not get involved. But that doesn't achieve anything. So this is a quote from the Universal House of Justice, which I think is important to consider. Okay, well, we're saying as Baha'is, we don't want to be involved with politics. We recommend people don't do that. But what do we actually recommend that they do? Because it's important to replace it with something rather than just having sort of a negative. So the House says, such issues are expressed in political forms which are unacceptable to Baha'is. I cut out the first part. So this is from a letter talking about indigenous rights in America. So that's the context of this, but it's generally applicable. So Baha'is who conscientiously avoid partisanship, subversion, and the corrupt attitudes and involvements associated with politics. At the same time, it is recognized that important issues of society fall within the province of government and perforce engage political processes currently in practice. Increasingly, as the faith emerges from obscurity, the Baha'i community will find itself compelled to assist in finding solutions to the social problems afflicting humanity. It will have to be wise in its actions to avoid the pitfalls of politics. So it's interesting what is being alluded to here is not that we just don't put any effort in. It's actually that we should put in 10 times as much effort to find a way of doing it without being political. So it's not a get out of jail free card. I don't have to worry about this as political. It's actually a call to action. It's like, okay, be better. You have to do even more. One example of the way the Baha'i community does this is the Baha'i International Community, which is a group which consults with the United Nations and offers policy documents. They've got a website, I think it's bic.org. And it's a great thing for anyone interested in sort of what the Baha'i community is doing socially. They put up all of the papers that they submit to the United Nations. So you can read everything the Baha'i community is sort of putting out, which can be quite interesting, I think. And this sort of cynicism about the United Nations, maybe they're trying to take over the world. You can see through that website, everything the Baha'is are saying, we're putting out there. There's no secrets. It's all very clearly stated and easy to access. So another letter on the same theme, a bit more recent. The term politics can have a broad meaning, and therefore it is important to distinguish between partisan political activity and the discourse and action intended to bring about constructive social change. While the former is proscribed, the latter is enjoined. Indeed, a central purpose of the Baha'i community is social transformation. Abdu'l-Baha's treatise, The Secret of Divine Civilization, amply demonstrates the faith's commitment to promoting social change without entering into the arena of partisan politics. So too, innumerable passages in the Baha'i writings encourage the believers to contribute to the betterment of the world. So if you're interested in the idea of homework, reading this treatise by Abdu'l-Baha would be a good homework activity, I guess. So yeah, Secret of Divine Civilization. And I love this thing that the House of Justice gets across, that politics in modern society kind of means two things. It means just civics. We use the word politics for it. But the faith forbids politics meaning partisanship and political parties. So we've got to separate these two ideas and sort of reclaim civics from the partisanship and kind of take it back for people who actually want to do good, not just people who want to get elected and kind of have power. Yeah. That all sort of makes sense, I hope. Or maybe I just haven't.
Don't worry.
So, sort of bringing to a close now. This is Idealism into Action into a Nutshell. This is one of my favorite quotes in any of the letters I've read recently. It's from a letter that came out very recently. The Universal House of Justice says, kind of summing up what the Baha'i community is doing, and I think a good blueprint for what anybody interested in helping society should be doing. They say, withal, the friends must guard against being drawn into the ultimately futile conflict and strife that characterizes so much of the discussion of the affairs of society, or, heaven forbid, allowing interaction of this type to permeate even fleetingly the conversations of the community. Yet such vigilance on your part in avoiding discord and in not becoming entangled in society's controversies should under no circumstances be construed as aloofness from the many pressing concerns of this time. Far from it, you are among the most active and earnest of humanity's well-wishers. But whether through deeds or words, the merit of your every contribution to social well-being lies, first in your resolute commitment to discovering that precious point of unity, where coalescing perspectives overlap and around which contending peoples can coalesce. I cut off the last part to fit it on the same slide. So maybe, but it's a wonderful quote, I think. And we see the Universal House of Justice always has this balance. So we want to be vigilant of being drawn into these political debates, but we don't want to become aloof. And it's very rare. I don't think I've ever seen it where the Universal House of Justice says, do this. It's always, here's one extreme, here's the other. It's up to you to find the middle ground and you to figure out how to put this into action. And this whole message was, this paragraph is just such a great summary of this idea of unity and diversity, I think, and especially the practical way that we can put it into action. Yeah. And that's all I had. So now it's everyone else's turn to talk, but thank you very much for listening. And thank you for having me, Mr. Perry.
Thank you, Ben. It was, as I said, you go into the details of researching all these things. You have brought things that I have not studied or highlighted. But of course, the last sentence in the last quote, I have been repeating many times, even in this forum. And that stuck to me when I read that letter. That is, whether by deeds or words, the merit of your contribution to the social well-being lies first in your resolute commitment in discovering the precious point of unity among the contrasting perspectives around which contending people can coalesce. So this was a very important thing that we actually has been discussing in this forum many times, because this is an interfaith dialogue, friends from various perspectives, various walks of life, we come and discuss, and we don't want to be in contention. We want to find a common point of unity. So thank you very much, and I hope you will share your PowerPoint with us so that others can benefit from this. So I leave our friends to give comments or question, whatever you would like. Anyone? Barry, Colin, Young? Yes, unmute and talk, Young. Everyone, you can unmute and talk.
Thank you. Can you hear me now, please?
Yes.
Thank you kindly. There are a few notes in here. I'm talking, I should try to avoid religion and politics at the same time I can, to be safe. I'm talking about the medical things here. If you keep talking about oneness, this is a medicine, okay, medical. So we keep talking about oneness of humankind and everything. Why we have twins? Why the mother give birth to twins? So they're not honest because twins is 2 babies and 3 babies and 4 babies. That's one thing. The other thing is we throw too much, as I see it, too much attention into unity and diversity. Just imagine that we were born and we know nothing about unity and diversity. We never come into conflict. We never come into any disagreement or agreement. So people will live in harmony, happy ever after, like we live in heaven or paradise. We will have one nation, one language, not even language. We don't need to talk. We just communicate to telepathy. So there will be no difference between diversity or not diversity. That's the other thing. And talk about consultation. When people say they do consultation, will they do true consultation or there's only through the checklist like procedures and work instructions and budget and project and all these things? Because if we talk about consultation, just like equal pay between men and women, it has been a very long issue. Because you see around COVID-19, the men can leave the house, go to the office and stay there and work like 4 or 5 days, okay. But the women working from home, they do the same job, just like 2 of them do the same job. But the men can go leave the house and go to the office. But the women working from home, stay home. Because we just divide policy for them working from home, so they stay home, give the children and do the job. And therefore they will be run behind. Everything in the office, they won't know. They won't be able to know because they will missing out some information running in the office. And so when people just sit down and talk about consultation with the unions, with the employers, with the workers, do they do the real consultation or they not? Because if they do real consultation, then the issue of equal pay nowadays will be resolved long time ago. Long time ago. So far I think your speeches are wonderful because you mentioned about economics, you mentioned about United Nations, you mentioned about all the major parties, and still, if we say we try to avoid politics, but you see, some people, they try to have peaceful solution, but then just like they sit in the middle of the road doing meditation and prayer, but then the police come and ask them what they're doing. Like you see some countries that has that sort of problem. So whether you try to avoid politics or not, whether you are allowed, in some countries, they're not allowed people sit in meditation, do some sort of riots peacefully. So that's another matter, whether we can avoid politics. Thank you so much.
I can comment, but it's in a different direction.
Yes.
I might just briefly, I'm not sure I fully understood your second point about drawing too much attention to unity and diversity. From what I understand you were saying, it was the idea that we shouldn't worry about the differences, and the idea of diversity is sort of focus on the unity. Is that correct? Or
you see, I had people come and talk to me about the training, about the equal employment opportunity and the diversity and maintain unity and diversity. I had people questioning me because we try to, like in the old days, the affirmative action program has been with the government, Australian government, for a long time, and with human awards, like human rights awards. And so therefore, with the human rights awards, all the large organizations try to compete for the awards and trophies. But then there are few people, they just don't like much about the training of that area, because they said, why the government or people in the training area pay too much attention into that issue of unity and diversity. Because if just say, for example, in real life, there's no such problem, there's no such issue. Just like in a family, if the man marries your wife, it should be like 100 years happiness. So why there domestic violence? Why? Because there's some very complex issue, and sometimes people just ask question, why things happen like that? Just because they haven't studied about the Baha'i laws, they haven't studied about the, the books, the hidden words of Baha'u'llah, or because people haven't been like educated about the Baha'i faith. Therefore, there's a lack of religious teaching. But in real life, the government worries so much about equal employment opportunity, and the large organization, they got to compete for human rights awards. So they will put training program into the, into the workplaces and ask people to come and study. So therefore, if we don't talk too much about unity and diversity, then there should be no problem. There should be a paradise. There should be heaven. Because we are living on earth, but this earth is a kingdom of God. So we actually already in paradise. We actually live and build and learn and study in paradise. Ideally, I mean, I'm talking about ideal here.
Yeah, I think, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know whether we are living in paradise, because if you take many parts of the world, there are so many problems. A lot of people are being killed, impoverished, suffering from all sort of oppressions. Now, the diversity is that we see, whether by color, language, nationality, religion, gender, caste, whatever you call it, there is a diversity in the whole humanity. But while having this diversity, trying to bring unity, that is what probably Ben was trying to say. So it is something that we see differences, but we have to transcend the difference and come together while having our own identity, whoever it is.
Yeah. I just shared a quote in the chat, I hope everyone can see it, which I feel is sort of relevant to this. It's from a letter of the Universal House of Justice. I think sort of addressing, well, not addressing, but relevant to what you were saying, where they say the aim of the Baha'i faith is to maintain cultural diversity while promoting the unity of all peoples. This diversity will enrich human life in a peaceful world society. Within the Baha'i community, the cultural traditions of the people who comprise it should be observed as long as those traditions are not contrary to the Baha'i teachings. And there's a link to the whole letter there. But I think this idea, it's a very good one, that if we just ignored all of the differences, we would have peace on earth, this kind of thing. But I feel like a lot of people may take that as, well, you're taking my culture away from me. You're asking me to be the same as you. So it comes across as maybe as sort of taking away rather than inviting people into a collaborative thing. So as I see it, the importance of focusing on the diversity is it makes people feel a bit comfortable with accepting being with others because they don't feel like they're losing anything of themselves, if that makes sense. Because a lot of groups, like the Nazi Party, for example, in Germany, not to compare what you're saying, but technically they were trying to achieve unity. But the way they did it was by exterminating other cultures. So I think the focus of the faith on that is about not making people feel like their culture is threatened. Sort of this idea of, as a drop enters the ocean, it's joining something greater. It's not losing anything of itself. I'm not sure if I fully understood what you were getting at there, but yeah.
What I'm saying, that's a very simple example. Just like if a Russian baby get grown up with a French baby, one were born in France and one were born in Russia, and if they were, and one born in Hong Kong, for example, for 3 of them, and if they grew up in the same house, in the same culture, of the same parents, I mean, not the same parent, but the same education from the parents, but they grew up in the same house, just like, like what you call the house for adoption or something. So they all brought up the same culture, the same everything, just like we use the English culture. So when they grew up, actually, they were not notice about diversity or different between you and me. I'm French, you're Russian, and you Hong Kong, tradition, because just like the Hong Kong baby will be not eating chopstick, but eating knife and fork. Like the same culture, the same cuisine, the same food, the same drink, the same teaching, the same study, the same education. So they want to see the diversity. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so I suppose just thinking off the top of my head, the issue would be, how do we decide if all the kids learn to eat knives and forks or chopsticks? Because if you say, well, everyone should eat chopsticks, well, then people are going to go, well, knives and forks are good enough for me. I don't want my kid not learning that. And then you sort of end up in a state of contention. So it's like focusing on the diversity to start with, at least. Maybe that's the vision for many years in the future. But it's sort of, you have to start with something that makes everyone feel comfortable. Because if you sort of made it, everybody has the exact same education, everyone's just going to fight about what that education should be. So you sort of start very broad and choose specific things that you want to be common, and allow the other things to be diverse, because otherwise no one will agree to even just like, okay, maybe I want everyone in the world should agree we shouldn't kill each other. Well, that's something to focus on to start with. But if I start adding on, okay, how do we eat, how do we dress? Well, no one's going to agree to even what I the good thing that they would agree with. So that's how I understand it. It's almost a very pragmatic principle. Yeah, in my understanding anyway.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Colin wanted to take us on another journey. Colin, you say.
Yeah, I like how the talk answered very well the topic of the talk, which is insights into practical guidance for unity and diversity, because that's what the world needs. We're very diverse. Everyone wants space, but no one thinks it's possible because we're all different. And in fact, the Universal House of Justice wrote to the peoples of the world in 1986 or 85 and pointed out that contradiction and said, and at the end of the statement, offered the Baha'i world as an example. Well, not an example, but a model for study, meaning that we're a workshop. We're not perfect, but we're learning, and have a look and see how we're going. And in a way, you've done that, Ben, today by showing us extracts from the letters from the Universal House of Justice, which are all based on experience and learning and distilling the essence and seeing what the next step might be. And all of these letters are there in the Baha'i library online.
John was saying something, but I don't know whether they heard.
Ben, following you in the journey of your dissertation today, one of the thoughts that I had was that, did God mean that we should be diverse and then still love each other? Will that be the way that God wants us, and still love each other, break all the barriers, and love our neighbor, love our enemies, and love those who hate us? So, I mean, those came up in the prayers as well. Is diversity something that was given, that we should? Because in the Bible, in the Old Testament, it shows, the Tower of Babel, and how they scattered, and different languages and different, even from the Adam and Eve story. That was one thing. And the other thing I was thinking was, what do the people in the world want now? Majority of billions of people looking for peace, food, hunger, and shelter, and health and welfare. These are the basic things that people are looking for. They have religions or they don't have religions. But I was thinking of people, who are atheists, and who are agnostics. You can't bring them within the religious groups that we are talking about. Even Buddhist, how many billions? About a billion, suppose, in the world, but they don't believe in God. It's just a philosophy. So in that context, how to bring all these people into conversation and consensus, and bring them into this action towards unity in this way?
That's some great questions there. I love the fact that when you're talking about diversity, you mentioned the Tower of Babel, because as you were talking, that's exactly where my mind went to, but then you beat me to it. You already mentioned it. But I know Abdu'l-Baha talks, I think in Paris, talks about people being the flowers of one garden, the leaves of one tree kind of thing. So from that point, I would say it is something that the beauty of humanity is the fact that it is diverse, and sort of the tapestry God has created. I think in regards to your other question, though, of how do we bring all these diverse people under one banner, one of the best documents in relation to this is the Tablets of Auguste Farel. So this is a letter Abdu'l-Baha wrote to Auguste Farel, who was a very much a materialist scientist. He studied ants a lot. He was very respected in Switzerland. But he basically, at one point, he hated religion, sort of because a priest was rude to him when he was a teenager. And he was kind of like, well, I hate religion because of that experience. But he realized society needs something to guide it. And so he wrote an essay called The Scientific Religion, where it's like, I'll just make a moral code from scientific principles, and we'll have that instead of religion, because we need a moral code. So I'll just, and then he discovered the Baha'i faith and thought, well, these are all better than my principles. So this is great. But then he wrote to Abdu'l-Baha to essentially ask, why did you ruin this perfect system by making it about God? Why couldn't we just not have God in it at all? And the Tablets of Auguste Farel was his answer to that. And it's very long. I'll post a link in the chat on the Baha'i Reference Library. But there's so many different points. It's so dense. But one of them, near the end, he says, because Auguste Farel, one of the things he asked, can I be an agnostic and believe in this faith? Can I still follow the principles but not believe in God? And Abdu'l-Baha sort of answers the need for his question rather than answering it directly. And one of the things he says near the end of the tablet, I think, is basically, if you can't believe in God through miracles or something, look to the teachings. If you think they're perfect society, that's enough. You don't need to have kind of a supernatural proof. That's my understanding of it anyway. But I think that tablet is very much a blueprint for your question of how do we reach out to agnostics and atheists. in a language that will actually appeal to them. I think that that tablet is very important. I hope I answered your questions, or at least addressed them kind of. I sort of forgot.
That's okay. Yeah. Thanks, Ben. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Pankaj?
Yeah, I just wanted to say something. I'm not sure if you've got echo. Maybe Dave can turn the sound down on our other computer. Yeah, I think also when I think about this whole question of unity and diversity and the way the world is coming together, that there are so many families that have within them many different cultures and a different history. We don't, our flowers are very variegated and different, backgrounds and stuff. And yeah, it's just really beautiful to see that from generation to generation that more and more people are part of the same family. And we think of Perry as part of our family too, even though it was a long time ago we lived down there. So yeah, I just wanted to thank you for your talk, Ben. And as parents, we're very proud that you've taken on these concepts in your life. And I think there's that, I think the power of consultation, if one looks at the study of it, is that we are all in search for the truth, perhaps, and maybe this looking to something greater than all of us will bring us together as well. So yeah, that was just a general comment.
Thank you. And Pankaj, you wanted to say something?
Yes, Ben, good talk. One of the thing which is mentioned about diversity, why this diversity? And my thought about diversity is that the diversity is actually the engine. That engine runs this whole universe. So without diversity, imagine that if there was no diversity, everything would be, let's say, imagine of red color. Everything red. Will it work? So actually diversity is the engine which runs this universe. And second thing about the ultimate religion, imagine an ultimate religion which doesn't have any rules. There are no rules, there are no regulations. Everybody is self-disciplined. You're trying to enforce things on others is making things worse. So when you drop that idea of enforcing things, trying to make it one way or the other way, no rules at all. It's all self-discipline working automatically. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Pankaj is, I had never met Pankaj personally, but he made presentation earlier, some time back, and he's a regular participant. But because he usually come back from work in car, so he is listening from car, probably. Thank you, Pankaj. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, and David, Sachi, Beta, Dore. Okay, David, go ahead.
There we go. Just wanted to say on that whole idea of self regulation that was just brought up, in the late 19th century in Britain, there was a real problem with prisons, with behavior of the prisoners and the number of guards that they needed to police, the behavior of all the prisoners. And so they looked to a man named Benfield and asked him to redesign the prison so that the prisoners would behave. How can we minimize the number of guards and maximize the behavior of the prisoners? And he said, simply tint the windows in the guard tower. And then they don't know if there's a person watching them. They have to assume that there is a person watching them all the time. And so therefore they will behave because they think they're being watched. They can't see if the person is looking at them or looking in the other direction.
Yes.
Essentially, this is a very interesting way that religion works, in that we are always assuming that we are under the watchful eye of a creator. And so Benfield's, it's called a panopticon, but you see it all the time in society now, with cameras that are under a blue dome in the roof of the shopping center, and you can't see if the camera's pointing in which direction, so that people will think, oh, I might be being filmed if I do this. It's just interesting that society has created this whole vanguard of self-regulation by making us not have cameras rather than having the camera.
Interesting, David. They had an experiment with math students. Half of them were allowed to were given instructions, hard, strict instructions, and the other ones were just allowed for them to, do whatever they want to do with the paper. And they found that the ones that had a free hand in the whole thing scored much more than the ones who were under strict orders, and because the others worked without any reward, and the ones who wanted a reward didn't function properly. So I was trying to sort of see any parallel from what you were talking about. Yeah, but we are living in a world that we are watched all the time. They say WhatsApp is being watched from last night or whatever, but it's true or not, I don't know. But everything we say is watched, and
It's well, Sachi, do you have any comments? Sachi, Beta, Zore, Lida.
I'd like to thank Benjamin for this nice presentation. I think I have no comments over it because I have a different belief in nature. So the diversity is because of the environment. And we have to, truth is the only single one. And if we follow the truth, then we can be united. We have to learn or investigate the truth. That is my view. And once it is done, I think these problems will be solved. Because this point of doing like this, we are doing for the last few hundreds of years. And we are in the same boat or even worse. I think in another 50 years or something like that, our youngsters will find the truth and we will be united. Until then, it is just a theory.
Visual
Very difficult to get the reality. Anyway, the presentation was very good. I appreciate for that because he has done research from all the directions, and I wish him well for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think, Siva, next time the talk should be, what is truth?
Well, I mean,
we have to find out that.
Yes, Jung, yes.
That's the truth. When we talk about Baha'i virtues, one of the Baha'i virtues is the truth. But you see, the government have put out regulations. I don't know whether it's going to be relevant to the truth or not, but just say we have policies of like privacy policy, one thing, confidential policy is another one. So just say a medical issue turn up, somebody will die of, just say, cancer in 2 or 3 months, whether the doctor should tell him or her the truth or not, or whether for the human reason that patient should be known about she's gonna die in like 2 months time, or the doctor will be like, constrained by the policy, like privacy, like, shouldn't be telling her because that is the private matter, then she tell everybody else, or that confidential matter that she's the only person should know about it. So I mean, for me, it's a bit not black and white in this issue about the truth. When you think that God want everybody to tell the truth, but in real life, when you tell the truth to somebody, will you hurt that person even more than you tell them nothing? Means she will die peacefully and she know nothing about that she died because of cancer.
Anyone wants to answer? David?
Should be next talk.
Well, I mean, and to me, telling the truth is fundamental. Truthfulness is the foundation of all human virtues. Baha'u'llah says, it is an important virtue, but your dress looks ugly if I say that. In the first place, it may not be true, but that is my opinion. But if I say that to a person, it obviously is going to hurt the person. So I may be honestly expressing my opinion, but so I had to be thoughtful, kind as well when I want to say things. But I think regarding the doctors telling, I think Abdul Baha said, if a patient is seriously ill, or I mean, whatever it is, telling him that you will be okay, or you'll be, you will feel better, that is acceptable. This is my understanding. Maybe David or Ben can correct me.
But Siva, what I really meant, Jung, was that, Jesus said, I am the truth, the way and the life. The Christians hold on to that. And one of the reasons Christians find very difficult I am the way, Jesus is the way, Jesus is the truth. And Jesus is the one who will give life and abundant life. So the truth, what is truth? Every religion, when we'll look at their religions as the truth that they have found. And Baha'i religion might become another, might be looked at as another religion, the truth that we are talking about. So that's why I asked the question, what is truth? That is, we are talking about, Sachi was saying, something beyond, the beyond one, where beyond the nature, beyond life, what is it, that truth? Will that unite us? One truth?
Excuse me, I think what I meant was about the truth means it's not truth about the religions, because I think all the religions are truthful and for people, different people and different areas. The main thing is truth about creation and the history. History of our human species and things like that. And we should know about the environment, how say our earth is formed, that stars are there and things like that. Then it will light us, the truth. But our religion said everything is good and correct for the time. I mean time. Today, we have to upgrade it or update it, because there were new things have been found and discovered. That is how I feel. But nobody can blame any religion because they all wanted good things. And they all wanted unity, peace, and happiness, everything. So they were great. But we had to look into the medieval updated things, especially in science. Because this was our scientific tools were not
I think you're
available
right.
in those days. Okay. Yeah, that's all.
I think you raise a very good point. One of the principles of the faith, at least, is the harmony of science and religion. And sort of one of the metaphors, which is quoted a lot, it's not from the writings, but Baha'i say it, is religion without science is witch trials, people being burnt at the stake. But science without religion is the nuclear bomb. I think it's sort of this idea, science is extremely important. It tells us about how the environment is structured. It tells us about the realities of the universe in a physical sense, but it doesn't necessarily give us moral values. So, for example, if you say it's wrong to kill, well, it's like, why? If somebody's going to kill me and I kill them, I'm alive. That's good, isn't it? And I haven't looked into it enough. I know Auguste Farrell tried to look at scientific principles and say we can establish morals that way. So perhaps it can, but I think sort of science doesn't invalidate philosophy, and philosophy is sort of the field of religion. So religion shouldn't end up defining reality and saying, okay, this is what science is because this is what religion tells us. But in the same way, I don't think science can really tell us what philosophy should be, because it's sort of looking at different things. That's my understanding of it, at least.
I think, was it Shoghi Effendi said that the religious truth is not absolute, but relative. So, I mean, any truth, whether by our own investigation or scientific findings, at that time that is truth, but it is relative truth because with the gaining more knowledge, we find that what we thought was true has changed. So that is relative truth. So even the religious truth is relative truth. It's not absolute truth. And the other thing, Father Jagaswadi mentioned that every religion say that they are right and what they have is the truth. What Baha'u'llah's teaching is one of the important teachings of Baha'u'llah is that oneness of religion. That is, in essence, all the religions are one. And how he explains that is that every religion has two kinds of teachings, the spiritual teachings and the social teachings. The spiritual teachings are the eternal moral principles like that we should not kill, we should be honest, we should help others, we should be kind, all these things. And which is the same in all the religions. In that sense, they are one. The social or the practical, how we live our life, how our government should be run, and how do we pray, how do we fast, and all these things, the social teachings, and that is changing in every religion. That is because the humanity is evolving, and the teaching has to be suitable and appropriate for that. Baha'u'llah, I think in one of the books, Kitab-i-Iqan, a book of certitude, he says that these prophets or the messengers of God, they use two fold languages. One is explicit and direct so that people can be guided. And the other one is allusion. The writings are alluding to something. And that is actually to test who is true, who can understand the spiritual insight and who are just superficial. So to me, and I was a Hindu and I became a Baha'i, what I understand is that the essential spiritual teachings in all the religions are the same. And if we find conflicting, that is because our understanding of those religions are not right. So this is why, I mean, the last sentence of the Ben's quotation, what we have to try to do is to, when we have contrasting perspectives, let's try to find the precious point of unity in our perspective. And together we walk towards that and try to understand a bit more and more of. No one can claim here that what he or she says is right and everyone else is wrong. I think we will agree with that.
Siva, could I ask you that, why can you be a Hindu and at the same time be a Baha'i? Because from Hinduism to Baha'i becomes another religion, isn't it? That's one of the things that I mentioned earlier. So to be converted to another way of thinking, another way. Way means religion. So everyone can hold on to their subjective religious beliefs, but at the same time they can have Baha'i way of thinking, and the philosophy can.
Yes.
I can give an answer to this,
Okay,
because it took many years for me to accept the Baha'i faith, because I didn't want to leave the Hinduism. But after becoming a Baha'i, accept all the religion, including Islam, Judaism, everything. And also I respect and I go to the religion. That when one of the Baha'is who asked us why you are not accepting the Baha'i faith. By becoming a Baha'i, you are accepting all the religion. So now I belong to all the religions, but I believe that Baha'u'llah has brought the teaching for us for today. That is a guidance for today, but I am not denying the other religions. So I can go to a church now, I will go to a mosque now, there is no problem for me. But by becoming a Baha'i, I accepted all the other religions. So not only Hinduism, but I accepted all the religions. But I believe that being a Baha'i, I believe that Baha'u'llah has brought the teachings that are for us to unite, and that he is the manifestation who has brought the teaching for us for today.
I'd like to share this quotation from Shoghi Effendi. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
This is Shoghi Effendi, the guardian of the faith. He says, nor does the Baha'i revelation, claiming as it does to be the culmination of a prophetic cycle and the fulfillment of the promise of all ages, attempt under any circumstances to invalidate those first and everlasting principles that animate and underlie the religions that have preceded it. The God-given authority vested in each one of them, it admits and establishes as its firmest and ultimate basis. It regards them in no other light except as different stages in the eternal history and constant evolution of one religion, divine and indivisible, of which it itself forms but an integral part. It neither seeks to obscure their divine origin, nor to dwarf the admitted magnitude of their colossal achievements. It can countenance no attempt that seeks to distort their features or to stultify the truths which they instill. Its teachings do not deviate a hairbreadth from the verities they enshrine, nor does the weight of its message detract one jot or one tittle from the influence they exert or the loyalty they inspire. Far from aiming at the overthrow of the spiritual foundation of the world's religious systems, it's about its unalterable purpose is to widen their basis, to restate their fundamentals, to reconcile their aims, to reinvigorate their life, to demonstrate their oneness, to restore the pristine purity of their teachings, to coordinate their functions, and to assist in the realization of their highest aspirations. These divinely revealed religions, as a close observer has graphically expressed it, are doomed not to die, but to be reborn. Does not the child succumb in the youth, and the youth in the man? Yet neither child nor youth perishes. So before I became a Baha'i, I have different perspectives about other religions. Buddhism was more acceptable than Christianity, and Christianity was more acceptable than Islam, and I didn't know about other religions. But after I accepted Baha'u'llah, every manifestation of God in my heart, they have the same place as I have for Baha'u'llah. And if anyone criticize one religion, I will defend that religion as I would defend Baha'i faith. This is because Baha'u'llah has taught me that. He says, if you deny any of the manifestations of God, you are denying me as well as denying God. So this is how Baha'is perceive other religions. Of course, we are trying to understand all the teachings, and we are continuously learning and progressing ourselves. I'm not as well researched as Ben. Ben has a deeper understanding, and he can just quote from this and that. I can't do that, but we are all learning still. But this is how we look at it. So the other religions to me are one of the same indivisible religion, divine religion. We are all integral part of it. And in my heart, I have the same place for Jesus as Muhammad. But others may not look at that way, but this is how I listen.
Absolutely. That's what I was trying to drive. Ben, earlier when you're talking also, I wrote down, what about suspicious minds, when it comes to bringing unity among religions and peoples. So the question will be, like what happened in Iran, it's like, are you going to nullify another religion to establish your thought, that establishment? That can happen in certain strong religious backgrounds. They look at it as another religion coming, and people are converted. So that we have to keep that perhaps in mind, that while Baha'i the religions and thoughts try to bring everyone together as one people, that suspicion can be there, that what about Christianity after that? What about after that? Sorry.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point, and I think it's something some Baha'is have struggled with in the past, where they have sort of tried to impose the Baha'i faith on people. And that's why the Universal House of Justice said, as in the 2010 Resbon message, they've very much said we have to consciously try not to do that, because it's an easy trap to fall into. You get excited, you want someone to share your religion, And I think the direction the Baha'i faith has sort of moved is more in focusing on social action and actually doing things for the community and inviting people to help us, but not being attached to whether they're Baha'is or not, to kind of expand our thinking beyond growing the Baha'i faith to growing sort of a collaborative community beyond that. But it's complicated because at the same time, we do want to invite people to join and share our faith with us. So it's kind of, I think in one of the quotes, they talk about a twofold purpose where we're doing this thing and this thing. So we're doing both, but importance of keeping them separate so we don't come across, as you were saying, of trying to impose beliefs. But it is definitely something the Baha'i community hasn't perfected and something we're still learning about.
I don't think that way. That's why I'm here almost every Thursday, because I would love to be in the group, because I think Baha'i teachings have a lot to contribute to the world, and hopefully we will all understand it with open minds. And the open mind that you're talking, I wrote it down as well. You need to have open mind. If you are suspicious, if you have closed minds, you will look at it differently. And yeah.
Well, if we have almost passed 2 hours.
Yeah, I'm hungry.
If there are any, unless you have any comments, Perimal, Lida, those who have not spoken, then if you don't have, we can close this. And I really thank you, Ben, and you really inspired me, because when I listened to you in the talk that you gave last year, and how much you have researched and how fluent are you with the various aspects of the teachings, and understanding and applying this in that sense. Yes. So I'm happy I spotted you as our first youth speaker. And I really want you to be some sort of an example to the others. And there will be a few more youth joining in future. So thank you, everyone, and God bless you all. Today actually is the Ascension of Baha'u'llah. Tonight, there will be a special service at midnight, 1 o'clock or 2, I can't remember exact time, 2 o'clock, a special service, the Ascension of Baha'u'llah.
2:15.
So I will be going to the temple at 1 o'clock. Thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ben. Thanks, Perry. Bye, everyone.
Thanks.